obviously, like, there's a systemic issue here, right? You know, you can fix it with one big cash grab for a generation, or some of them at least, but then the next generation's going to have the same issue. A lot of this ties back to housing. Nobody can afford housing right now. Nobody.
Yeah,
like, zero people can afford houses.
City planning is like this intractable problem that nobody seems to be able to get right. And I think even if you look at like California, you've got like, what was that $1 billion train line to nowhere? Like, if even in some of these like left-leaning places, we can't figure out good city planning, good public transport, every place is becoming increasingly unaffordable.
Billions spent on high-speed rail, not even broken ground.
And
just
there's so much like
avoid.
There's a lot of conflicting pressure too on housing prices, where people are asking for basically contrary things without realizing it. Like housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable because there are so few houses available. People want student debt forgiveness so they can afford houses, which would just drive housing prices up if every student had an extra $20,000 to buy houses. You know, interest rates are finally going up, which are making houses unaffordable, but it's supposed to drive down demand. Like the housing market is just in a super huge mess right now, and we're trying to combat it with so many tools beyond just like what we really need is really just like the aggressive rezoning of housing districts.
The Times had an article the other day that said that Tokyo has built more units in the last couple decades than exist in total in New York City.
Yeah,
and
not even surprising.
And as a result, people say, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the price. As a result, it's actually affordable to live in Tokyo. Like
Like Tokyo is the only city in the world that has managed to. Japan has a really aggressive housing policy for Tokyo. Yeah.
We need to repeal the Faircloth Amendment. I mean, the AOC kind of had I think a bill that came up in 2018.
What's that one do?
That's the one that bans basically all federal funding for public housing, and it's been in place since 1998. Yep, that was a good Clinton special, right, for
Classic.
the neoliberal turn, and it's just still been.
Did she sort of repealed it or something? I remember it coming up.
Bernie and her were working together on it, and then I just think it died. I don't remember. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, to get anything through the Senate, anything like that's not budgetary related.
I think it's really funny how this was framed as like a coastal elite problem, LA, New York, whatever, and then in 3 years, housing prices in Florida have gone up like 40% or whatever.
Alabama, I think, is up like 20% a year over year for like 4 years in a row.
Everywhere you move to, it was framed as like, oh, it's California, and it is to an extent, but it will be everywhere. Everywhere short of like Wyoming, and probably even there is going to have this issue. It's really just we somehow coordinate massive rezoning across the country at a local level, or some kind of federalized, subsidized housing, preferably better than the ones we've tried before. You know, those weren't great. Or, you know,
you could make federal money available to cities that fix their problem.
Better that than highways.
Yeah,
people are tearing down their highways.
You fix your zoning problem, you crush your NIMBYs, then you get free housing.
Yeah,
and there's only enough for 10 cities. And everybody, go.
I feel like the issue that you run into, though, is this feels like a huge, like an external failure of democracy, and that all of your voters that are your strongest voting base in these cities are the ones that are most incentivized to vote against like new housing. Because like the people that are most harmed by lack of available housing in any particular city are future residents, are people that could move in and take advantage of lower prices that are now not able to. And then if you are living in a suburb in California, goddamn, I live in Glendale, Culver City, Huntington Beach. There are so many of these places where you're in an apartment and like across the street from you are these like borderline dilapidated houses that sell for like $750,000 each, and it's like these people don't want to see high density, housing go up. These people don't want to see all these condos or all these new apartments go up because now it's going to threaten their property value. So I feel like you run into a weird conflict of interest there, where you're incentivized as somebody that is in that area to vote down and to be a NIMBY, like you actually are rewarded for it. I don't know what
the good news is we won't have any homeowners pretty soon.
Yeah, wow.
It'll just be two.
Just renters.
Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, or you could
Vanguard and BlackRock or whatever.
I mean, you could just Prop 13 your way away from property taxes, so people would just stay in their house forever and then never have to deal with it.
Well, another big one is the if you own it can't be treated as a speculative investment. If you own a property and no one's using it, like you're waiting to sell it off, or that just it can't be allowed. Tax it so heavily that they have to put it out. Lower the prices. There's no ideal here, right? Like the ideal is everyone just acts in their best interest and all the young people go out and do the city council voting. But like this is an unworkable problem. Like no one can afford anything right now.
Right now you've got private equity with cash making a bid on, say, a $500,000 house. They have the cash, so they don't have to take any, they don't have to pay the 7% mortgage. And then you have it against a person who managed to scrape together a down payment and then has to pay a 7% interest rate. Like, that's an unfair fight. The homeowner is going to take the cash offer every single time. And so
And private equity is buying up a
buying
ton of
everything.
apartments in New
Yeah.
York City. My apartment complex got bought by a private equity firm
just
during
sits empty.
COVID.
they're going to own like half of the housing
and they
stock
treat us
within
like
10 years if we don't
garbage.
stop.
Like
Yeah.
they don't repair anything, and we can't get through to them. I mean, that's a whole nother saga. But
They probably want you to leave so they
oh
can
yes,
like
well
renovate
it's
and
rent
then
it's
upsell.
rent controlled. So
Right.
they do. So they want me to leave anyway. But Ryan, I actually was reminded when you're talking about a piece you wrote a few years ago that still sticks in the back of my mind about the potential commercial housing bubble. That is also something that we should monitor because private equity was also and venture capital, I believe, buying up a ton of those commercial real estate properties, and they were pretty overinflated, if my recollection serves me.
That was before the pandemic.
Yeah, like, do you have any updates on that?
People who watch that are just deeply frightened. They're like, this is
Yeah.
the CMBS, the commercial mortgage-backed security market, it has like so many of these traders scared. Is it going to be another like
Yeah.
mortgage-backed security meltdown like we had in 2007? What they're trying to do now is turn them into residential properties, and all different Fed action is trying to like keep the bubble from bursting. But you're in New York, you're seeing a lot of that, right? They're turning them into half residential buildings or something.
Yeah.
The issue's been exacerbated heavily by everyone working at home too. So you go downtown and you see like rows and rows of dead empty corporate office buildings and like for lease available in every commercial and office districts. And then you go check Zillow and like, a house that was 150,000 10 years ago is now.
Those
think
are the
they-
interest groups
quadruple
that are also pushing people to return to work, get back into the office. These real estate groups
More
that
rent.
don't. That, yeah, right.
A lot of
I
these
think-
are 5 and 10 year leases, so it holds off the calamity a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, this is an
Oh,
issue.
good. Holds off the calamity.
Yeah, I understand people want to rail against like private equity or large firms buying up houses and everything. I feel like this is a small issue. I know that people like to fixate on it, but the only reason why private equity goes after this property is because it's so goddamn lucrative, because there are so few housing units available. People want to fight when it comes to the housing issue. It's like one of those things that appears simple, and then when you read more, it's really complicated. But then I think when you read more, it's actually really simple. Like the only way that housing ever gets fixed in the United States or in any part of the Western world is to build more units. Rent control.
Or to decommodify it.
No, decommodification doesn't create more space though. You have to have more places for people to live. Like rent control has been thoroughly studied as a horrible way of trying to continue like housing stuff.
not?
Like building like luxury condos is good for everybody because people move up into other condos and make stuff available for people. You can get rid of private equity, but there's still going to be people that buy houses. You can try to get rid of like all landlords, but there's still going to be a lot of people chasing these few units. I think it's at the end of the day, it's more a physics problem than any type of economic problem. You just have a lot of people that want to live in an area with not enough houses available. And as long as we keep trying to like nibble at the edges by going after like vacant units, of which there are very few of in the actually like highly populated areas, or going after like private equity who are only making money because there's so few units available, or like by trying to decommodify
But
housing.
I think it's both too, because of the political economy. Because think about it: if that little lady had that much power to save the stoplight, if private equity rolls everything up and is benefiting from low housing supply, private equity also owns most of Washington. So
Yeah, but
they're going to be able to
homeowners-
stop the solution that you want.
Homeowners benefit from low housing supply too, though. That's the issue.
But there aren't
right?
going to. But the people owning homes will be a minority pretty soon. So there'll be fewer people benefiting. It'll just be
Possibly.
private equity.
Yeah, I guess it depends on.
I mean, that's the direction of the chart.
Sure.
There's no way out of this besides upzoning. That's like an inevitable. I mean, behind us right now, I grew up in LA. Most of it's single family homes. Every separate home is separated by a 5-mile plane of road and grass that dies in the summer and the fall and the spring now. As a lot of it's also city planning. We build our city so you have wide swaths of residential, and then everyone wants to shop right here, which means a lot of people got to drive there. You don't have these issues to the same extent in like Paris. Relative to population density, you want to go somewhere in Paris, you're above a coffee shop. There's something. That's not a suburban flavor. I think so many of these issues, it seems so difficult to solve because once you start talking about redesigning cities, this is no longer a federal issue. You can offer money, but at the end of the day, I mean, a big mobilization campaign to get 5 million young people to go to their local city council meetings? There's an upper limit in terms of like immediate action, but we need that,
Yeah.
Although we are redesigning the cities at least because we're being forced to, since the commercial buildings are.
Yeah, Seattle's been building a
Become
ton of
useless.
apartments lately. They're all over the place, the constructs, and it's great. I love seeing that,
Like every time I've been to
wish-
Seattle, there's like 500 cranes in the air every
God
time I'm
bless.
driving around.
I
I
love
don't know
it.
what they're doing,
Yeah.
but there's always a lot over there. Yeah.
Well, it's good. I mean, honestly, making more commercial real estate spaces, hopefully, in urban centers for people to live in, just would accelerate something that I would like to see happen, to make sure that some place like New York City isn't just Disney World for tourists, and when you go in to see a show or bridge and tunnelers and coming in and like, I don't want to see a homeless person, that might make me uncomfortable, and they actually become livable spaces where people can afford to be. I think that's one of the biggest problems with housing, and it's just creating, as Ryan has been delineating, an entire generation of renters.
It's a big sell for decommodification too. We know housing first policies work for homeless people, like on average getting them off the street, and it's economically beneficial in the long run. And we also don't want to set things up so that you have like a dense urban core where all the cool stuff is, and you build new housing, but it's like an hour out. So you create like this sort of like scaled out issue where all the poor people have 4-hour commutes to get into their janitorial jobs. It's really difficult. Why do we decide to talk about the difficult problem?
I don't know.
There's no like easy conclusion. Hey,
Are there some easy problems?
I appreciate that, Destiny.
All right, bye.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.